The United States says Al-Qaida, Taliban, looking for nuclear weapons. The White House has warned that Al-Qaida is quietly hunting for an atomic bomb, adding urgency to a historic summit where President Barack Obama will try to persuade world leaders to step up efforts to keep nuclear weapons out of terrorist hands. Expectations for decisive action by the 47 countries are low because existing controls haven't worked as well as hoped, and some nations worry tighter regulation will only slow civilian nuclear power projects. 3 months ago, American intelligence officials examining satellite photographs of Pakistani nuclear facilities saw the first wisp of steam from the cooling towers of a new nuclear reactor. It was one of 3 plants being constructed to make fuel for a second generation of nuclear arms, more nuclear weapons. The message of those photos was clear. While Pakistan struggles to make sure its weapons and nuclear labs are not vulnerable to attack by Al-Qaida or the Taliban, the country is getting ready to greatly expand its production of weapons-grade fuel. The Pakistanis insist that they have no choice. A nuclear deal that India signed with the United States during the BUSH administration ended a long moratorium on providing India with the fuel and technology for desperately needed nuclear power plants. But now, as critics of the arrangement point out, the agreement frees up older faculties that India can devote to making its own new generation of weapons, escalating one arms race, even as President Obama and the President of Russia signed accords to shrink arsenals built during the Cold War. Mr. Obama met with the leaders of India and Pakistan Sunday, a day ahead of a 2-day Washington gathering with 47 nations devoted to the question of how to keep nuclear materials out of the hands of terrorists. In remarks to reporters about the summit meeting, Mr. Obama called the possibility of a terrorist organization obtaining a nuclear weapon the single biggest threat to U.S. security, both short-term, medium-term, and long-term. So in other words, perhaps it's not a matter of if, only a matter of when. The summit meeting is the largest gathering of world leaders called by an American president since Franklin D. Roosevelt organized the 1945 meeting in San Francisco that created the United Nations. He died 2 weeks before the session opened. But for all its symbolism and ceremony, this meeting has quite limited goals, seeking ways to better secure existing supplies of bomb-usable plutonium and highly enriched uranium. The problem that India and Pakistan represent, though, is deliberately not on the agenda. And what good is that? President Obama is focusing high-level attention on the threat that already exists out there, and that's tremendously important, said Sam Nunn, the former Democratic senator from Georgia, who has devoted himself to safeguarding global supplies of weapons material, enough, by some estimates, to build more than 120,000 atomic bombs. And that's just crazy. But the fact is that new production adds greatly to the problem. Nowhere is that true in Pakistan, where 2 Taliban insurgencies and Al-Qaida coexist with the world's fastest growing nuclear arsenal. According to a senior American official, Mr. Obama used his private meeting on Sunday afternoon with Pakistan's newly empowered Prime Minister to express disappointment that Pakistan is blocking the opening of negotiations on a treaty that would halt production of new nuclear material around the world. Experts say accelerated production in Pakistan translates into much increased risk. The challenges are getting greater. The increasing extremism, the increasing instability, the increasing material. That's going to complicate efforts to make sure nothing leaks. The trends mean the Pakistani authorities have an even greater challenge. Few subjects are more delicate in Washington. In an interview last Monday, Mr. Obama avoided a question about his progress in building on a 5-year, $100 million BUSH administration program to safeguard Pakistan's arms and materials. Mr. Obama said he feels confident that Pakistan has secured its nuclear weapons, at least hopefully. Taking up the Pakistan-India arms race at the summit meeting, administration officials say, would be too politically divisive. We're focusing on protecting existing nuclear material because we think that's what everyone can agree on. One senior administration official said in an interview, to press countries to cut off production of new weapons-grade material, he said, would take us into questions of proliferation, nuclear-free zones, and nuclear disarmament, on which there is no agreement. Mr. Obama said he expected or hoped for some very specific commitments from world leaders. Our expectation is not that they're just some vague, gauzy statement about us not wanting to see loose nuclear materials. Those efforts began at the end of the Cold War 20 years ago. The summit meeting will aim to generate the political will so that other nations and Mr. Obama's own administration can create a surge of financial and technical support that will, again, hopefully bring his 4-year plan to fruition. Mr. Obama plans to open the summit meeting with a discussion of the scope of the terrorist threat. During the presidential campaign, Mr. Obama promised to increase funding by $1 billion a year to ensure that within 4 years, the essential ingredients of nuclear weapons are removed from all the world's most vulnerable sites and effective, lasting security measures are instituted for all remaining sites. In Mr. Obama's first year, though, financing for better nuclear controls fell by $25 million, about 2%. The Obama administration got off to an unimpressive start. The next phase, Mr. Obama's arms control plan, is to get countries somehow to agree to a treaty that would end the production of new bomb fuel. Pakistan has led the opposition, and it is building 2 new reactors for making weapons-grade plutonium and 1 plant for salvaging plutonium from old reactor fuel, and that is a sign. Asked about the production, Pakistan's ambassador to the United States said, Pakistan looks forward to working with the international community to find the balance between our national security and our contributions to international non-proliferation efforts. But in private, Pakistani officials insist that the new plants are needed because India has the power to mount a lightning invasion of conventional forces. India, too, is making new weapons-grade plutonium. That is another sign. These are all signs. It's becoming increasingly likely. Again, it's not just a matter of if, but it's more like a matter of when. That could be true. And these are more signs of the end times, transition days. Everything that must change quickly or rapidly. And they must change for the better. Yes, these are more signs.